Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's watch. I don't know if she's going to eventually reach out to someone, but this is what I was worried about, that she would isolate and suffer quietly, which is more suffering for her. She has a lot to, at the very least, express emotion about, but also just process. Like I'm worried about a lot of things with her. I'm worried about a lot of things with her. At the very least, I'm worried that if Matthew is a bad choice, that her isolation will push her towards Matthew, partially because the way Matthew talks is indicative, I don't know if this is what's happening, of a love-bombing, abusive person. Maybe even someone who is psychopathic. I'm not diagnosing from afar, but if that were true, at the very least, someone that's exhibiting high control signs and is someone that is very sure in his language. And when you have suffering without support and you're isolated and you're unsure and the knight in shining armor comes in and says, I will fix it, then you're susceptible to that. And then they get their hooks in on you and they start filling your head with all sorts of notions like those other people, they give bad advice. I give good advice. And you're kind of weak. You don't really understand how the world works. You really need me to take over. I'm not saying that's going to happen. At the very least, if Matthew is the way the edit makes him look, it doesn't seem like the wise choice. And I would imagine that if she talked with someone, they would say, wait, what? Oh, well, obviously Matthew is not advisable.
Every man I talk to today is making me cry.
Why? A girl Clay tore me up.
Okay, good. Maybe she was just waiting for her friends to come out of the pods. That's the way it looks. Okay. Oh.
Because of Matthew. He's like, Icky, what the fuck is going on?
He said another man told you to leave.
What do you mean, leave?
And good. She at least appears to be at the beginning of telling Amber what's up. That's important. And I hope Amber doesn't consider it to be some kind of competition play by AD. It's a gift that AD would be giving her.
Matthew said to leave with him.
Tonight.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm gonna live out my worst fears.
Okay, I don't really understand AD's approach here. She's being kind of coy with it or something. Maybe she's worried there's going to be some conflict. I don't know. If I were AD, if I were in AD's feelings, which I think is at least to some extent still invested in Matthew, then I guess I would say, look, I'm sorry. Because at the very least, she would have to say, look, I haven't been telling you. You've been telling me, and essentially I've been lying by omission by not telling you that I'm also, wanting to be with Matthew, or at least I was. And earlier when you were telling me about all those romantic things he was saying, phrase for phrase, he had just said those things to me. And I didn't say anything in the moment because I was overwhelmed. I'm sorry. But I'm telling you now that he said those things phrase for phrase. I don't know what that means, honestly. I don't know if that means there's something wrong with him. I don't know if that means that he changed his mind about you. I don't know. I just don't know what that means. And full disclosure, there's a part of me that hopes that he was just wrong about you. No offense, but part of me wants to be with him. But another part of me doesn't know. Something like that. But she's just kind of, just lobbing things over the fence. Like, and by the way, and then Amber has to, wait, what? I need you to give me more information.
Slay.
Slay? What's happening? Let's rewind that.
Girl Clay tore me up. Because of Matthew. He's like, Icky, what the fuck is going on?
He said another man told you to leave.
And it almost looks like AD accidentally said Matthew's name in front of Amber. She was talking to the other person, so...
Leave with him?
Matthew said to leave with him.
Yeah.
I'm gonna live out my worst fears.
I'm old. Slay, apparently you can use it maybe in a sarcastic way of great. Is that what she's saying? Like, oh, slay, great.
Bro, this guy never talks. Like, I can't even imagine him having any type of emotion, like, just like, what the fuck are y'all talking about?
Wow, that was like a big blind side for me. It was a...
And this is good. And it's in contrast to AD in that he, Clay, is processing his feelings and being differentiated about it. It's a big deal. There's a lot of emotion there. And he's being vulnerable and working it out. And he's naming the feelings. And this will help him. This is a huge green flag. Matthew, on the other hand, at the very least isn't doing that. And then you see AD, who at first I thought, oh, she's isolating. And then there was a brief moment where I thought, oh, okay, good. She's talking with her friends. And maybe they edited it out. But it looked like she barely talked with her friends. And then it looked kind of like, in terms of the edit, that AD was isolating again. Maybe because she had that interaction with Amber. Whereas he is like, oh, wow, this is hard. So there's a lot of strengths that you see in, and weirdly, I could see people, AD included, but the audience, would look at the contrast between Matthew's presentation and Clay's presentation and label Clay as the red flag because he's expressing his jealousy or his competition, and he got prickly when AD was talking about Matthew and all the dilemma that she was going through with him, and he got a little prickly and aggressive. You know, that's not awesome, and it's not an indication of a problem, but in terms of what we're seeing, and what AD saw as well, because he exhibited this kind of differentiation and maturity and vulnerability in front of her. To me, there's not any indication of a red flag with Clay. Now, maybe y'all know, because in the future, maybe Clay reveals all sorts, but to this point, there's nothing that is concerning, particularly in the direction of being abusive or something, that he recovered pretty quick from the trigger that happened to him. And he seems to be, he knows that he's working on things. He's like, yeah, I have a persona. I used to be a nerd when I grew up, which I think he was saying that he compensated by becoming kind of a player persona or something. And it's his protection. It's his, if you're into internal family system, you know, it's his policeman or it's his protective layer. Whereas with Matthew,
One thing I don't like doing is having competition with like other men that I don't think is of mine. Like, I'm sorry, like,
Yeah.
if it's like Drake, honestly, if it was somebody like you, I'd be like, yo, respect, like, you know what I mean? But it's like, bro, I'm watching this guy, seeing him operate.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a universal feeling. For some, they'd be like, well, yeah, I don't know. I'm in competition with that guy. And it seems to be kind of tweaking his ego a little bit. It's making him perhaps equate himself like, wait, so am I lower, you know, than Matthew? But you could also see him thinking, that guy? Like, what is, I mean, I would hope that he would take a second and reorient himself not towards Matthew, but towards AD and think, well, what does this say about AD? Now, you know, I don't think it says much about AD because Matthew has presented a particular kind of side to her. But even then, I think it is, well, what would you have done? I mean, it's hard to know because you're watching the show, but given the way that Matthew, maybe you can remember when you were watching the scene at first with Matthew being romantical. Did you detect anything? Was there any kind of a red flag? And I'm guessing you still weren't necessarily an unbiased because, you know, you saw those scenes where he would have stood up and done all of that. But I'm just going to take a guess and say that not everyone would have, even though they might have liked Matthew, when he started to get romantic and the language he was using, particularly when he was going into what could be termed as love bombing, I think for some people they'd be like, ooh, what's happening here? There's some language in here of, you're going to rush over and save me from what? What? I don't need anyone to save me.
Like, that's not you, AD.
It's gonna be what it's gonna be, bro.
Yeah.
It's gonna be what it's gonna be. You feel me? Hope everybody get what their heart deserves.
Sorry.
And then his friend is just saying, hey, you know, it's just going to be what's going to be. We can't control it. I think another thing that if I were there, I would say to him, I get it. I'm with you. It's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow. It's tough. And you really like her. And to hear her say that she likes someone else, particularly him, it's a tough pill to swallow. But, that's what we signed up for when we got here. And if you and her are meant to be, then, you're just going to have to endure this because that's part of the process. You could have fallen in love or you could have fallen in like with someone else as well. And then she would be the one having to sit and wait or something. So, it's just one of those things. You give it some time. And then we see that he cries, which is another huge sign of maturity and emotional well-being and health and a good partner. I hope that all of you are able, if you're dating, to see your partner cry at some point so that you can see, oh, okay, they have that capability. They are okay with themselves enough, one, to cry in that moment, but also to have cried enough times such that they can cry now. I've talked about before, for me, because of toxic masculinity in the 5th grade, I went on a mission to suppress my tears because I had this bad moment where in the 5th grade, I felt like it was too old for us to cry or for me to cry anymore in certain circumstances. If I was in the 2nd grade and I cried at school or something, I don't think it would have devastated me. But when I was in the 5th grade or 6th grade, we were playing in PE in class. We were playing this game. It's kind of like softball with the bat, and I was next at bat. And when the batter in front of me hit the ball and was running to first base, he threw the bat directly behind him. And it was like hucked it. Even though there's humans around, he just, not everyone plays baseball. Not everyone understands how to fling a bat when you're heading to first base safely. And so he just flung it, and it was like in slow motion, just like a helicopter blade just coming straight at my knees. And it hit me, and it didn't really hurt. It was more the fear and the startle. And I started to cry because it was startling, And I was humiliated because of toxic masculinity. I should have been able to cry in that moment because who gives a fuck? But because I'd been programmed and because our stupid culture, I was ashamed. And so I wandered away. The next memory I have, I'm up on this grass hill and there are 2 of my friends, these 2 girls, and they're consoling me. And I'm just sitting there thinking, why did you cry? There wasn't anything, it didn't even hurt that bad. Why are you crying? You cried in front of everybody. What are you doing? Okay, it's stupid. And if you have kids, talk with them. People are a lot better about that now, but we're not out of the woods yet. And so I went on a mission to stop crying. I had no guidance. There was no TikTok video on this. I just concluded that maybe I could convert all of my tears into anger, which is interesting because that is something that people do. Maybe I had some experience with that myself. I don't know. But then every time I could feel the tears coming, I would clench my fists and I'd grit my teeth and I'd be like, "Murr," and I'd get angry. Not healthy. Fast forward 5-10 years, and I couldn't cry if I wanted to. Things would happen in my life where you would think I would cry, and I wouldn't. And when I was in my later teens, it felt wrong. I was like, what's happening? Did I kill my emotions? That doesn't feel okay. Then as I got into my 20s and I started to work in this field, I really tried to reverse it. And so I would be in situations where I might cry, like in a movie, for example, and I'd think, oh, this is probably one of those moments where maybe I should cry. Or if other people were crying, I'd be like, maybe I should be crying right now. And I would like try to push if you can possibly, I'm sure there's not a muscle that is involved, but it was like really just concentrating on it and, maybe even trying to accentuate the emotion because it wasn't like I wasn't feeling the emotion. I just wasn't expressing it through crying. And then little by little, there'd be a tear. Oh, and then, and then the next time, like a little bit more. And, you know, pretty soon I was full on crying when a notable moment was when Mulan, the cartoon, came out, I think 97. So I'm in graduate school at this point. I'm 26 years old. Since as an Asian, I almost, especially back then, I almost was never seeing my people on the screen. And even though I'm not Chinese, it's close enough. Every story beat, and it's a great movie anyway, but every story beat in that movie, I was just bawling. And I thought, I've arrived. And ever since then, it's even gotten more since then. I cry like all the time, and it's great. It's glorious. It feels great. I love it. I love it. I love it. And when I was his age, Clay's 30. Well, you know, maybe by his age I would have been okay, but not everyone can do that. And it is so I say that the fact that he could cry in that moment tells me he either has never completely shut down his tear system, his crying system, or if he did, he's repaired. So that's another green flag.
What I did not tell you is that, like, everything you said to me today, he said to me yesterday.
Okay, good. So she's being more explanatory. The little interaction before, I'm like, I feel like there should be more words here.
And asking him to have my hand.
That makes me feel icky because he did the same thing to me. He was like, I can tell how important family is to you.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can't call your dad, I won't. Like, we'll leave.
Yeah, I hope AD says that too. He said the same thing to me, that we would, or I guess she did earlier. So, okay, this is good. The previous interaction, the sleigh, I'm like, what's happening? So this is what I was hoping, that they'd be like, wait, what? And because they're on the same team, and that'll help both of them run for the hills.
Now I feel like a dick. I'm so sorry.
I know, but you don't have to be.
No, I do have to be, because I know I'm a blabbermouth.
And it's good on Amber that she's replaying everything and thinks, oh, now I'm worried I was a dick. No, Amber. You had an experience. You were talking to one of your friends in a lounge and had no idea that that person was even mildly involved with Matthew, or at least that's the way it looked. So, no, you weren't a dick. You were doing the experiment.
What the actual fuck is wrong with men?
Yeah, you know, if you're frustrated, but don't land there, because half of the population of the planet is not like Matthew. Newsflash. Yeah. But this certainly doesn't help with trust, right? Especially if you've had other bad experiences in the past.
I could never, ever, not love you. I genuinely was thinking last night, what is my favorite part? And it's y'all.
It's good to see. I was worried that they were going to be at odds and see it as a competition for Matthew when it is anything but.
I don't know. I don't know.
I think it's time to bow out.
So we can contrast Amber's reaction versus AD's. And I think it might point to relational traumas and the developed schemas thereof. Because for me, and I couldn't know because I'm like, well, I'm on the outside, my heart's not involved. But for me, with a little bit of time to let it soak in the way that Amber just did, of course, the conclusion would be, I'm done. Maybe there was something there and there's some sort of excuse there, some sort of story, but I don't even know if I care anymore, you know? At the very least, it's absolutely possible that this person is not for real. And I don't know why, but he decided to manipulate two women, maybe others, anyone else in this room. And I'm done. It sounds like she's planning on going home, which I wouldn't blame her as well. That shows that I don't know what it says, but it could say something about AD that she's had someone like this in her past, in her childhood, and it seems normal to her, whereas to Amber, it isn't normal. It could also be that for AD, she believes that she's incompetent, or that there's some aspect of her that someone needs to correct for through their confidence and their dominance. Because Matthew is definitely going down that road. And it did seem to work on AD. Whereas Amber maybe doesn't have that. There could be a lot of other factors as well. It is notable because they essentially had the identical scenario. They were told the identical thing. They were in the identical situation. And AD has known for a long time about Matthew's dual game. And at least in the edit, it looks like she's still very much fused with him. Now, maybe she just takes a little bit longer, which would not be a pathology. But we see for Amber, at least in the edit, and you have to infer like some extra time in there because they're truncating it. It kind of looks like for Amber that within 15 minutes, maybe half an hour, maybe even as short as 5 minutes, she has felt the feelings and been overwhelmed and reeling like, what? And then, oh, yeah, no.
We should talk about something else.
Yeah, I agree. Do you ever get told you look like a celebrity?
Yeah,
Do you?
I do.
I do too. All the time on the plane, I get.
Well, this is not in the spirit of the experiment, right? By the way, Chelsea and Jimmy made up somehow. It seemed as though Jimmy had turned it around and then came back to Chelsea. Chelsea was really happy about that. Chelsea was also dating Trevor for a bit, but Chelsea seems like she's into Jimmy more. We haven't seen Trevor in a while. And then, of course, there's Jessica and Jimmy. So what happened there? It's been a while since we saw them. But anyway, and now she's bringing up celebrity. Hopefully they don't say which celebrity, because that would be breaking the thing. But, maybe it's helpful to have that information. And if they're already into each other, then maybe it'd be good to know. And this points to how there aren't draconian rules around this. It's a guideline you're supposed to follow. And that's interesting, because I always figured there would have been censors, right? Because the thing that I didn't know in the beginning is that even though they might be across a wall, and it's not really a wall, it's because each pod, I think, is individual, but the way it looks is that they're right beyond that other wall. I thought that it was like at the bank when they have a wall and then and so the sound can go around, But what it is that there are microphones and speakers. So they're essentially on a speakerphone with each other. And so I would have thought that the people monitoring the dates would say, oh, they're heading into a zone, and they just mute them. And then there'd be a little voice from above saying, hey, you're not supposed to do that. But apparently they don't have that, and they're free. Or I don't know, let's watch what happens.
But I don't see it, so don't get excited.
Say it.
I don't even know if it's MGK's wife or his girlfriend.
Megan Fox.
Yeah, so she just did that. I don't know. Do you agree? Is that accurate? Is it misleading? I don't know. But yeah, that does kind of ruin it, right? Because in terms of the entertainment value, I suppose it doesn't really matter because they're essentially dating and it's fine. But he has now been primed, right? If he doesn't get any information as to what the other women look like, then, that could change things. It potentially just completely flips the whole experiment on its head, which again is fine because people are free to do what they want. But isn't that interesting that she just said, I look like Megan Fox and I have brown hair and blue eyes, and they didn't put a stop to it. I mean, I'm guessing they're not going to get kicked out. And what's interesting to me is that so many people seemingly before didn't do anything like this when they could have. And they're in there from my understanding, especially when they get further on in the week, they can be in the pods with one person for 8 hours and just talking about all sorts of things, right? And the fact that seemingly most people never went anywhere in this direction, like what celebrity do you look like, or how tall are you, or the color of your hair, or the color of your skin. Seemingly, people just never go there because even though I don't know, maybe they thought they couldn't, but if they knew that they could, but they're encouraged not to, it's interesting that they would make that choice because they believed in the experiment, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, so Johnny and Amy, and there is no love triangle. A lot of love triangles, but none with these two, apparently. None preceded this. And maybe this couple is kind of the sweet, nice couple that won't have any problems. There's no red flags yet. And who knows? But, I could see them being one of those couples that it's like from beginning to end, like with Brett and season 4, right? We had Brett and Tiffany, and maybe they'll be like them, hopefully. It'd be nice to have that. I'm trying to remember. Let's see, they're both 27. Just not a lot of stuff on Johnny because they haven't really talked about much or put much in the edit. Amy, she talked to, I think she indicated, she mentioned, I think that she was depressed in the past. And she mentioned growing and changing recently, which I don't know what that means, but I don't know if that's going to show up later or not. But it's just something that I have in my notes that she talked about. She talked about how her brother has autism and her dad takes care of him, and that if something happened to her dad, she would be the one to take care of her brother, and asked if Johnny was okay with that. And Johnny said, absolutely, I'm right there. So, yeah, Johnny seems like kind of a goofball, but seemingly well-meaning. So, yeah, we haven't really gotten to know them much by this point. So at this point, I'm rooting for them. Yeah. But I should be careful about saying such things because you've already watched ahead and I could eat my words later. But for now, I'm rooting for love. I'm rooting for Johnny and Amy. Yeah, it's a nice Johnny and Amy. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.